Well, welcome to Live Your Call. I'm Bruce Bugby, and I'm glad to have another opportunity to visit with you and talk to you about how we help people understand how God has created and called them because God loves us and He knows how He's made us. The problem is, oftentimes, we don't know how He's made us. And when we do, we have greater clarity so that we can be the kind of followers of Christ that are faithful, fruitful, fulfilled, and really making Him famous. And so I'm excited to have a conversation today with Dan, and he is really leaning into the whole area of leadership, but more importantly, authentic leadership. And what does that mean? What does that look like? How does one grow into it? How does one grow out of that or fall out of that? What does that mean for not only the leader in some sort of position, but then there's many who are leaders and not in a formal position. And so we want to just talk about how does self-awareness of the individual like you and I, how do we know where and how we can best fulfill our calling and how we have integrity in what we do? Because too often we have good intentions, but we're trying to do things we were never intended to do. And so what we want to do is understand how God speaks to us. So Dan, I want to welcome you and just have you kind of introduce yourself. I have a ministry in Kenya I've been involved with for about 18 years. And when we get together and have introductions, they often would say, well, you're of age. And so rather than I try to tell your story, you just briefly tell us a little bit about who you are and how God's kind of brought you to this place. And then I'd like to dig a little deeper as to how that message of your life and authentic leadership is finding its way in you and most of all, through you.
Yeah, Bruce, glad to be on the podcast. This is exciting, and I'll just kind of start with some of the foundational elements. I've been a Christian for a long time. When I was in college, I really had a kind of fundamental encounter with Christ that really changed the way that I think about myself, the way that I influence other people, my purpose in the world. I've got a wife and two little girls, not so little anymore, 10 and 13. So I'm the only guy in the family. We've got a dog. He's also a guy to a certain degree. But I lead an international consulting firm that works with Christian executives, entrepreneurs, and owners all over the globe. We're in 27 countries. And, it's a lot of fun because our goal is really to help Christians build businesses that are designed to benefit and bless their communities. That's really what we're designed to do. I was a pastor for about 10 years before that. I'm currently a teaching pastor now, and that's just on a sort of a part-time basis. Just love my community, want to help out however I can. Wrote a book called Authentic Leadership a couple of years ago. Yeah. It was fun to watch that grow, and that turned into a kind of a speaking career. Spoke at the Global Leadership Summit a couple of years ago, which was a lot of fun. And
Remember.
I am probably half a month away from finishing a doctorate in global leadership, which is a ton of fun. Yeah, it's
wonderful.
It is way more painful than I would have thought.
I've started a doctorate program twice.
Okay, yeah. Hey, good for you. I mean, that's a lot. Yeah. But yeah, I love the work that God has put in me to kind of help influence people who are leading, typically executives, entrepreneurs, and owners are the people I tend to really thrive with. And everything that I've ever done, be it in ministry, being a high school history teacher years ago, leading an international consulting firm now, has always been at the intersection of faith and leadership.
Yeah.
That's really where I found myself, and that's really where I like to thrive. So, and that's what I think brought me to this conversation, because I know that's the same place that you find yourself in a lot of conversations.
Yeah, because the beauty of our God is that we have a purpose, and we know that, but so many people struggle with understanding that purpose or calling. What is it? I mean, we're all called in the generic kind of common call way,
Right.
but you're unique. You're different than me, and you're different than the next person. So what is your unique calling and purpose? And so that requires some sort of awareness process or mentoring or coaching or again, I'm thankful that God is who God is because He breaks in and meets us where we are. Because some of us haven't had those people,
Right?
And and so by His grace, we've come to that place. And so, in your own journey, how have you identified yourself as a leader versus positions of leadership, or you just find yourself kind of floating toward the top in a room? Now, there's some people that want to climb to the top, and I find most of those aren't authentic leaders.
Most of them, you're right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But there's a true leader cannot not lead.
Right. Right.
And so tell me a little bit of how you've understood your own journey of development, and then how that's led to where you are now with so many countries and so many impacts in so many arenas.
Yeah. That's a great question, Bruce. So I'll start with the wrong way to look at it. And this is my own
Oftentimes
story.
that's most clarifying.
100%. Yeah, we'll talk about the dirty swords, the broken stuff. And then this is probably same for you and the people who are listening here. I think early on I had a deep sense of insecurity. One of the things I talk about in the book is my parents were deaf. They were from Nigeria, and we were from a small town. And so, I was known as the black kid with deaf parents. Like that's who I was, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I had a deep sense of insecurity about who I was and what our story was. Anyway, the point is, when you have that sense of insecurity, which a lot of people do, you tend to look at leadership as an opportunity to kind of fill a gap in your soul. Or you look at it as an opportunity to finally be validated, to get some social capital. So you become a climber, and you start using people in order to get some sort of social position, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's an easy thing. The Bible talks about building your house on sand. And that is an easy way to build your house on sand. That's going to blow up in your face at some point. It does for most people. Then there's another way to look at leadership. I did that way for a while, and it was really painful. But then there's another way where it's more healthy, it's more authentic. And for me, the journey to genuine, authentic leadership really came about by me first having a deep sense of self, recognizing who God made me to be, and saying, I'm okay. I don't have to be a leader. I don't have to lead anything. I don't have to be in front. I don't have to be on stage. I'm fine being in the back with a mop and a bucket. Genuinely, not like, artificial humility, but like genuine humility. I can do whatever. But then leadership starts to really grow when you start to feel a sense of frustration. When you see something wrong in the world and you're like, why doesn't somebody fix that?
Yes.
Like, why doesn't somebody, does nobody see? Like, this meeting should be run better. Or like, why can't our city fix or why are all the kids doing, or why are all the moms, and so you start saying like, well, the answer is obvious. And then, maybe a dose of humility from the Father says, well, it's not obvious to them.
Yeah.
And what's necessary in that moment is someone to step up and say, I'm willing not only to diagnose the problem, I'm willing to roll up my sleeves and be the first one in to try to fix the problem. And what happens when you start fixing problems for people, because there's an internal drive, people start saying, well, do you want to help fix more problems? And then people start lining up behind you to help you fix the problem. And before you know it, you're a leader by default, not so much because you're trying to push for that position.
Yes. I think that's powerful because I talk a lot about passion, and passion is a motivator. When you're serving in your area, passion, you look at the clock and it's been 2 hours and you think it's been 20 minutes.
Right.
You're just in a time warp.
So true.
Because it's motivating. You're motivated to do what you do.
Right.
And that's a life changer to me for a leader, because you're always going against the wind, it seems, as a leader. And if you don't have that motivation or clarity of call, vision, dream, passion, in other words, you see something and you say, there's a way to do this. And that is a part of the way. I like the way you describe that, because a lot of people feel by default. When I look at it as, no, it's by design.
Yeah, that's right.
See, you see that because God has made that your assignment.
You got it. You got it.
On the flip side, there's a lot of people that don't see their assignment and they're floundering, and they try so many things, but they're not slowing down. And what's in my heart?
Yep.
What moves me? All right. I'm not going to be a Billy Graham. I'm not going to be a Mother Teresa.
Yeah.
They significantly impacted the world. What will impact my world? I think, when I'm 85 and I'm sitting on the porch having a little lemonade and watching the sunset, and I'm just rocking a little bit and thinking about my life, and all right, I didn't change the world, but I made a difference here.
Yeah.
Where is that?
That's right.
For you?
That's right. Yeah, that's good. That's good. There's a moment in time, there's a season in the world, there's a place on the globe that there's a people group that belong to you, that those are your people to influence. The Bible talks about this in Acts. David did what God wanted him to do in his generation, and then he died.
Yeah.
There is a generation, there's a moment, there's a place that distinctly belongs to you, and there's a problem for you to solve. And it is to your benefit to find what that is and run hard after that. So that when you're rocking in your 80s,
Yeah.
you look back and you say, I did what God wanted me to
And
do.
a
And that's
little smile on your face.
exactly. And that's all
Yeah.
I could have
Yeah.
done. Yeah.
Yeah. I find so many Christians and so many leaders, they want to be good. They want to be good leaders. They want to be good followers.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I feel like they strive under the burden of trying to be good. When the Bible says no one's good, no, not one.
Mm.
And I think we forget that Jesus didn't die to make us good. He died to make us free.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so what is it to be free?
Mm.
Now, I'd like you to talk for a little bit as to how you see freedom affecting a leader's authenticity.
Mm.
Because I find that while a lot of people, most people would say, I want to be free. I want to be my own person.
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
When I look around at how people behave, I don't think they do. Because if you were really free, you would also be responsible.
Mm.
And most people don't want to be responsible.
Mm. Mm.
So they don't accept and live in the freedom they have.
Mm.
Because if I tell you what to do and it doesn't work, then you can blame me.
Right.
So you don't have to be responsible for your failure.
Mm. Mm.
So as a leader, how do I lead you in a way that leads you to take and live in your freedom with responsibility? So as Don Cousins says, how do I help you become more independently dependent on Christ?
That's good. Yeah, that's good.
Because as leaders, we can create a dependency model that in the long term does not serve our people well.
Yeah, that's really good. Yeah, I think just to start off, when you're thinking about freedom, you're right, especially as Americans. Like, we love this idea of like freedom.
Yeah.
And I think freedom for a lot of people is don't tell me what to do.
Right.
Like, look, I'll make my own decisions, But you're right. The flip side is responsibility. I have to own the decision that I've made. I can't point to someone and say, Bob told me to do it or John told me to do it. I think ultimately, when you're helping people understand what leadership is, you have to help them understand that they are accountable to God first.
Yeah.
And so God gives them that sense of call, gives them that sense of passion, that gives them the gifts, and they are responsible to use those gifts. Paul talks about this specifically, like, if you have the gift of leadership, lead. If you have the gift of, then do it. If you have the gift of mercy, then be merciful. If you have the gift of service and generosity, then he doesn't say if you have the gift of this, then go talk to your pastor first and then figure out if he thinks it's good, or you talk to your mom and
read 4 books, go to seminary.
exactly. Yeah. No, if you have it, then do it. And there's this sort of sense of accountability, like God gave it to you. Now it's your responsibility to turn around and use it for his kingdom and for the benefit of the people around you. That sense of both responsibility, God has given this to you, now go use it. And then that freedom, like you don't have to ask permission. Now, of course, discernment oftentimes means that you're learning what God wants you to do in community, and you're kind of
you got to collaborate. It is community. The I can't say the year I don't need you.
Exactly right. But there's an element of you saying, okay, I think I'm clear here, and I don't need anyone else's permission. That's that freedom part.
Yeah.
But then the accountability, the responsibility is like, now I really do need to be accountable to God to actually go do this. And I can't say, well, Bob told me, or so-and-so didn't give me an opportunity. So I think when you develop leaders, everything you're doing is about helping them understand who they are. And then the flip side, the responsibility to use it for God's kingdom without having to consult with a lot of people based on what they think.
It's for a season I was at Willow Creek Community Church. When I started there was about 6,500, which is sizable.
Wow.
But when I left 7 years later, there were 15,000.
That's incredible.
Yeah. It was a whole nother seminary experience.
Yeah.
But how to navigate that? How do you connect, disciple, engage, get them involved?
Yeah.
And that was just an unbelievable kind of season where helping people understand who they are, beginning to see, this is what I should be doing, and moving into that and facilitating. Now they're impacting 3, 4, 5, 10 people, and a few of them come to Christ. And so it gets to be that kind of exponential growth. But there needs to be a path. And so many don't have a path. How do you help leader? How would you help me
Mm.
be more authentic? I'd like to think all of us are authentic at some level,
Yeah, right.
but we all can be more so.
Mm.
Um, what kinds of ways do you come alongside people in your consulting to say, here are some things you need to consider? Here's a buffet of 6, 8, 10 things, and you may not need these 4, but here's 4 that may help you
Yep.
grow. So, how do you approach that? How would you help me get to the next level?
Yeah, that's a great question. So with branches, we really do try to help entrepreneurs, executives, and owners around the world really try to find their niche. And you said it really well. I mean, when you found your niche, when you figure out who you've been designed to be, there's a sense of energy
Yeah.
that comes from the work you do, and you lose track of time. You get into that flow state, right? To be more technical, everything sort of flows together, and you love what you do, and you lose track of time. So we do try to help people get into that. And one of the very first things we do is sit in a conversation like this. We talk about their life, and we say, okay, tell me about a moment when you were doing something and you felt unbelievably alive. Like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
Where are you? Who are you with? And usually people can look back on a season or a moment and they can say, okay, this is where things really clicked. I don't know why. It just felt so good.
Yeah.
That's a great starting point. And then you maybe talk about the things that drain you, but there's far more things that drain you than things that fill you.
Right.
And so by focusing on the things that fill you, you really can kind of get closer and closer and closer and closer to the area in which people feel like they're making a difference. As you and I have talked before, you talked about your story, and you've mentioned some elements that I think are really fundamental to this conversation. You said, "Look, I felt like I was drawn to help people, help them figure out who they're meant to be." But there's some churches that are a great fit, and some churches that aren't a great fit,
Right.
based on who I am as a person. Sometimes people, when they think about what they're called to do, they have this sort of generalized sense of what it is, but they don't get down to the details.
Mm-hmm.
This is what I love to do, but I don't love to do it with this group of people. I
Yes.
do love to do it with this group of people.
Yes.
I love to do it with people who run really fast, not run really slow. I love to do it in this
That's right.
season, but not another season. So it's all about sort of getting into the details and trying to help people understand the arenas of life where they feel like they've come alive the most, and then positioning them well for that.
I think that's so wise because I kind of like to think I'm unpredictable and, I can move and weave and bob
Yeah.
and yet we're all creatures of patterns.
Hmm.
And, when you listen and say, all right, give me 5 examples in your life when you felt motivated, that it was a significant win for you.
Yeah.
And that doesn't mean big. Maybe you fixed a toaster.
Yep.
And you were just so excited.
Right.
And then over here, you fixed a mini bike
Mm-hmm.
and got it going,
Mm-hmm.
And then over here, and you have this, you're a problem solver.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
You love to take broken things and get them functioning again.
Yep.
Well, that's a very transferable skill.
Yep. Yep.
And so you look for patterns, do you?
Yeah. Yeah. And sometimes, and the best consultants are the ones that can see patterns that other people can't see
Yes.
themselves. And so getting people to slow down enough and to start telling their story, you can see the connections. You're like, oh, okay. So you like to do this and this and this, but not this and that. Yeah.
And I find too in the work I do that people can be maybe want to be a small group leader. That's a good fit for them, or a team leader in a marketplace kind of thing. They can pull people together and get a job done.
Yep.
But their capacity, we ought to use our gifts according to the grace given to us. When the master brought the servants in and he is going to go away, he gave to each according to their ability,
Yep.
which I find fascinating, that little phrase.
I love that. Yep.
That he had some awareness of their ability. So he gives one 5 and he gives one 2 and he gives one 1.
Yep.
And then who doesn't produce?
Not the one with the smallest.
Yes.
Right.
That's because he had some awareness ahead of time. I find sometimes people are not effective because of the environment, like you're saying. And I think, for people who are listening, you can be doing the right things in the wrong place.
100%.
And sometimes you can be in the right place, but the wrong position.
Totally right.
So knowing, to me, I think of your passion is the arena of where. If I'm passionate about something, I need to be doing something in this arena. Let's say special needs kids or something. Okay, but what will I do in that arena? Now that to me is more according to our spiritual gifts, because gifts are tasks, they're abilities. So if I'm a leader, then I will lead in some aspect of special needs children.
Mm.
If I'm a mercy person, I might engage, come alongside the kids or the parents of the kids who are having to deal
Totally. Yep.
if I'm a teacher, but I am not good up front,
Yep.
I might write curriculum that others teach.
Yep.
You see, so it's your personality that has to connect with your gifts
Yep.
in the arena of passion. So it's alignment.
100%.
To me, alignment is the key.
Yep.
And again, you probably see excellent leaders in the wrong company
Mm-hmm.
or the wrong environment. Say, dude, you need to be in this arena or this kind of a structure.
Right. Right. And I'll add to that. I think, and what you're saying is 100% correct. There's an inherent complexity to it, because it is like, there's multi-layers, but then it's also moving, right? Because like you could, talking about special needs kids and your passion, you might be better working with parents. You might be better working with the students themselves. You might be better working on the books, as opposed to working with people at all, but yet still in that same arena. But then over time, your skills develop. And what might have been good for you 5 years ago is you've outgrown the position, and now you're ready to lead the whole organization. Now you're ready to go multi-site across the country because you've learned from the ground up and you've sort of gotten better over time. And so sometimes, your obviously your passion doesn't change, but your position does based on your growth.
I'm going to flip that around. You say you might outgrow your position. I see often where ministries outgrow the leader.
Mm-hmm.
And they try to hang on too tight. And my observation of people is we're all role players. We're all role players.
Yeah.
And when the environment, the situation, the context changes, and I keep hanging on to that role, I may now be a negative influence in the organization.
Goodness.
How do you address and approach someone who's, when you assess who they are and how or what they're supposed to be leading, the fact is they don't have the capacity. They're not wired at this level. Another arena, but just in church planting. I've worked with planters. They can go from 0 to 100 all day long. To go from 100 to 200, they can't do. They go up to 120, 125, back to 90. All right. Then there's some people that couldn't get 3 people in a room.
Yeah.
But you give them 100, and they can get to 300.
Boom, just
but
like that. Yeah.
At 300, now they can't get their arms around everybody, and they can't let go. And so we're all role players. How do you look for, address, and help a leader say it's time?
That's such a great question. And it tells me you've been around the block, the fact that you're asking that. I'll give you a couple quick examples. One of the most prime examples in history of that phenomenon was Winston Churchill. So he obviously, if you're familiar with him, you think World War II, right? He's synonymous with World War II. Pulitzer Prize winner, or Nobel Prize winner, excuse me. Well known around the world, won the war, da-da-da-da-da. Then he gets ousted in the very next election. Like, he is gone. And it's this horrible moment where he's like a national hero, but yet he doesn't get elected.
Right.
And his party's out of power. One of the reasons was because he was suited for wartime as a prime minister and not for peacetime.
Right.
And I think there's a level of objectivity that boards, leaders need to have whenever they're assessing the growth of the company. They have to be able to say, okay, who is needed for the season that we're about to go into?
Yes.
And having that level of clarity and transparency before the moment comes is super helpful. Like most things, if you decide before you get to that critical moment, everything gets easier. Yeah. One of the things I've heard years ago that was super helpful for me is really kind of framing conversations with leaders in moments like that around tours of duty, using a military term and saying, okay, so we're going through a tour of duty. This is what we believe you're responsible for in this season. And saying, okay, boom, you got the church as church planters, for example. You got the church from X to X. Amazing. Well done. Now, we're going to have another conversation. Yeah. We're about to go into another tour of duty. Now, we need the church or whatever to go from this to this. The competencies it's going to take, we believe, to go from this to this involve this, 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 this. Now,
And by the way, I'm not saying it.
yeah, and if I list these things and all of them make you tired and exhausted, that is a really good sign that, hey, either this isn't the position for you, or you need to grow these competencies and we're willing to wait X amount of months until you do, or we're willing to hire people around you so that you can continue to do the thing that only you can do, or you need to go back and, get on your knees before God and decide, am I the right guy for this? And if you're not,
Yeah.
that's okay.
Exactly. And it goes back to, I think, the heart of what I'm learning about you and authentic leadership is, if I know who I am, that's not a hard thing to see, understand, or accept.
My identity is not wrapped up in my job because I know who I am.
That's right.
Yeah.
I mean, I was at Willow Creek, and many people said, "Why would you leave? Why did you leave? Oh my gosh, this is the pinnacle. Everybody's dying to, because I didn't feel my gifts could be further utilized there. I felt the ceiling was there. I was getting put in a box.
Yep.
And so many churches and congregations and organizations were saying, we need what you're doing.
Yeah.
I to stay there, I would have constricted what God called me to do.
100%. You're a cheetah and you're made to run.
Yeah.
And so when you can no longer run, gosh, that's a terrible existence.
I got to go to another field.
It might be great for somebody else. They're cats too, but they're not cheetahs.
Yeah. I'm entrepreneurial. They needed managerial, and that's no harm, no foul.
No harm, no foul.
Yeah. It's sad, you make friends and relationships that way, but there's a bigger calling.
That's right.
And it's not in one sense, it's not about me, but it is about me. And if I don't know me, then that's, again, you overstay your welcome.
Yeah.
And then it does get ugly. And then all the good that's been accomplished seems to get forgotten.
That's right.
So leaders need to, again, be self-aware.
Yeah. I think what's challenging is that people tend to resist change. You're fortunate because you're entrepreneurial. So when change comes, you're like, all right.
This is fun.
There's a wave coming. You're like, let's surf that baby. You're like, but
don't have a board? I got the body.
Yeah, right. Exactly. This will be fun. Most people aren't like that.
Yeah.
And so change hits them like a wave and they try to run from it. And then they find a place that really does fit, and some of your listeners are in a position that's amazing. It's perfectly built and tailored for their position. And they hope and pray that the world doesn't change, that nothing shifts, that, economies don't move, that, ministries don't change, that they don't outgrow their position or they get new staff or whatever. They just hope that nothing changes. And that's just not reality.
Yeah.
And so it's often best to just embrace the fact objectively that, like, I'm in this position, and you said it earlier, for a season. And God will let me know when the season's up, and then he'll open the door to a new season. Yeah. But just recognizing it could be short, could be long, but this is not forever.
I'm amazed. The way God's led me is I think of an oil lamp in the scriptures, and the room were blacked out. And I had a little oil lamp. We'd see about 6 feet. And you kind of wonder, well, what's over there? Well, I'm not going to go until I can see what's over there. And for me, it's like, no, just walk in the light you have. And as I walk, I can see the next 6 feet and then the next 6 feet. And so I don't need to see everything.
Yeah.
I just need to see the next few feet.
Right.
And I'm thankful that God's giving me that perspective. I can't say I'm some spiritual giant.
No.
I've just got a small brain. I keep it simple. what I mean?
No. Well, David talked about, your word is a lamp unto my feet and a light unto my path, right?
Yes.
I mean, it's that same idea, right? It's so good.
And at this stage of my life, I've been walking with the Lord for, 55 years. And I look back at the places I've been, the churches I've had the opportunity to serve with, and all the different dynamics. I've been to 40 countries. My writings are in 17 languages. People I'm meeting and have met. God's opened doors in missions more recently in Hispanic environment. It was just in Cuba several months ago.
Were you really?
Yes.
I'd love to hear about that.
Yeah. And when I look back, I go, I couldn't have planned such a thing.
No.
And because I just had my lamp, I couldn't see where I would be at this time. But at this vantage point, to look back, it's just a heart of thankfulness and awe
Gratitude.
Gratitude, yes, and the privilege of running into people. I mean, when I was in Kenya several years ago, I visited a Young Life Club meeting in Nairobi. And after the meeting, someone came up to me saying, "Are you Bruce Bugby?" I said, "Yeah."
Oh, wow. Yeah. Okay.
I said, "Yeah."
Randomly in Kenya.
Yeah,
Yeah. That's
yeah,
awesome.
yeah. And he says, "I'm an associate pastor here at the church." I said, "Oh, okay, great." He
Mm.
said, "You wrote Network?"
Oh,
I
wow.
said, "Yeah."
That's
He says,
awesome.
"We've translated it into Swahili,
Oh,
and we
gosh.
have all our new members go through it."
Oh, wow. What'd that feel like?
It's surreal.
Yeah.
It's surreal.
Yeah.
You know, I've been on an airplane and listening to people in the front talk about
Talk about
this
you in
course.
the book. Yeah.
This, yeah. And
Yeah.
I'm sitting going, how weird
This
is
is
that?
nuts. Yeah.
I feel I've been blinded by grace.
Mm.
I
Mm.
think if I knew the impact, it would be
You
a
wouldn't be able to.
little heady and overwhelming
Yeah.
and get weird.
Yeah.
But God gives me just enough little things to say, amazing. And, I think what you're doing, Dan, is the same. You'll never have a full understanding of the impact because when I teach and train and there's 6, 7 people, as I say, I was in Cuba.
Mm.
I couldn't speak at a church because that takes a different visa and it's all different kinds of dynamic.
Jeez. Wow.
But they have house churches.
Mm.
And if you want to gather in your house and have a worship service, you can do that.
Mm.
So I did 7 trainings in 7 days
Okay.
all across the island
Mm.
in groups of 15 to 40.
Mm.
And it was amazing to see their receptivity and their desire to learn more. This was a whole new message. And
Mm.
so
Mm.
when I get to other parts and to see how that's impacted them, because you never know who's a Barnabas in this group.
Right.
You
Right.
don't know who's a Paul in this group.
Mm.
You don't know who that Peter is in the group. So you just do that and say, God, I'm here.
Mm.
Use me.
Mm.
And what excites me about what you're doing is not just talking about leadership as principles, but as an expression of character.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Mm.
there's people who got character and they don't know, they don't lead
Yeah.
well.
Yeah.
And there's people that lead and don't have good character.
There's a lot of people like that.
And so I like that you're trying to move in the lane,
Mm.
of again that faith and practice aspect of what you say.
Yeah. Yeah. Mm.
What's the biggest question for you? What's the biggest challenge you're facing as a leader? Maybe with your ministry,
Mm.
maybe with writing, your education, family, and just as a leader, where do you feel you're kind of hitting a wall and need to learn a little bit more about yourself?
Yeah. 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 So that's a great question, Bruce. The first one, I think, to answer it well, is about my personal influence, and the second one, I think, is organizational influence. So personal influence, I'm really trying to manage how I understand how people see me. So I'm
Yeah.
6'4", I'm a big guy. When I walk in the room, it does something to people. Like they feel differently when I'm standing next to them. And it's really important for me to be aware of how people perceive me, how they
Yeah.
feel when I'm in the room, so that I can adjust, not being inauthentic, but I can adjust and make people feel as secure as possible, as quickly as possible.
Sure.
Right. But at the same time, and this is just, being 100% transparent, I do have a very strong vision for where God's taking me in my life. Writing the book, finishing a doctorate, traveling the world, all that stuff. These are things that I really feel very called, raising my family, feel very called, marrying my wife, very called to do, very specific, clear, this is what I'm meant to do. But those things as well have an effect on people when I'm in a conversation with somebody.
Sure.
And so as things have begun to progress, I'm really thoughtful lately about the words that I use, right? So you're in a conversation with somebody who doesn't have a doctorate. Most people don't, right?
Mm-hmm.
There's words you just don't use. Right? You just don't use those words because it
Right.
makes people feel something.
Right.
Even though it might be the right word, don't use that word because you're trying to really create rapport. And I think what I'm learning as God keeps giving me larger platforms and more opportunity is that it's important, very, very important, to be as approachable as possible.
Yep.
The people I admire the most are the ones who have accomplished amazing things in the world and yet have somehow figured out through all of it to just be normal, or at least have people feel like they're normal,
Yes.
you know? So that's one thing I'm actively working on for whatever it's worth.
Mm-hmm.
The other element is the organization's influence. You and I were talking earlier about, you know, safeguards that you put in place and conversations that you have before things really blow up. Branches is growing pretty quickly. And so now I'm thinking my job is to think 5 years out and think, okay, what are the conversations? What are the frameworks we need to put in place today
Right.
that will save us a lot of pain and headache tomorrow? It might feel like it's restrictive today, but gosh, the fact that we've been talking about this for 5 years will keep us from having a problem 5 years from now. So
Exactly.
really kind of thinking ahead on like how we grow sustainably and in a healthy way.
Yes. What do you understand as your top spiritual gifts?
Yeah. It's a good question. When you would list your spiritual gifts, list them for me. Let me see if I understand what you mean by spiritual
Well,
gifts.
the scripture identifies at least 23 different gifts. So I clearly see you have and would affirm a gift of leadership. And that I would say as a gift of leadership as an organizational leader, which again, you can be a pastor as a shepherd leader, you know, you can be an executive pastor and lead that way. But I see that as one. And what I'm hearing from you and wondering if you also have an apostolic gift, because you are so aware of the context and your environment as to how you don't let your differences inhibit your message. That's cross-cultural thinking. That's apostolic. I didn't realize that in my own life or habits. I just thought it was me, you know. You know, when in Rome, it was the Romans.
Right,
you know what I mean? It's
right.
not
It's
rocket
natural.
science,
Right.
But I realized for many people they don't. You know, so even from California moving to Tennessee,
Right.
I can't be a Californian here.
Right.
Because there's a different operating system.
Definitely.
And it's not good or bad, right or wrong. It's just different.
Just different.
So it's a little bit like Mac, PC.
Right.
There's different operating systems, and one doesn't always translate into the other. So when you're mindful of how you're being perceived, some may interpret that as you're just on an ego trip or you're just, you know, or a pleaser. When I see it as being sensitive in the model of Jesus, when he spoke to the Pharisees, he had a different tone and message. When he spoke to the woman in the well, he had a different tone and message. Now, the beauty with Christ is he dealt with everybody kind of uniquely in their worldview.
Yeah.
So when he's out talking to farmers, it's agriculture, you know what I mean? And so, but his message was consistent. It was about God's love, grace, forgiveness, freedom, you know. And so what I'm hearing you say is, you know, you're aware. So like I've often said, like when I go speak to a bunch of Baptists, you know, in 5 minutes, they'd swear I'm a Baptist.
Yeah, right.
And when I go to a Presbyterian church, everything's logical and in order and all that. I can do that too. And they think I'm a Presbyterian.
Right.
And next time I'm in a double charismatic swing from the chandelier type charismatic church, you know, and I can say, oh, the Lord told me this and God gave me this word. And, you know, I mean, they can swear I'm a charismatic, you know. And I frankly have a little fun with that. And some could say, oh, you're just being inauthentic.
No.
And I said, no, I'm just authentically trying to connect in a meaningful way.
That is a phenomenal thought, because I think there's an immaturity to somebody who's a chameleon, right?
Yes.
But then there's a sort of a sense of integrity on the other side of that.
There's an intentionality to say connection is the goal.
Yep.
And
I will be all things to all people, so I might save some. Yeah.
So that exactly. That's one of my life verses.
Yep.
That and Ephesians 4:1, you know, walk worthy of the calling to which you have been called.
That's a good one. Yeah. The clarity of the call, but also you can be able to relate with all kinds of people.
Exactly. And but if you don't know your call, how do you walk worthy?
That's right.
So you got to know that call.
To answer, you're 100% right. To answer your question about, being in the room with people and really trying to help them sort of connect with the vision, or, try to relate with them as much as you can, being culturally intelligent. A story comes to mind from years ago that when you said that, I thought, gosh, that's so true. I think I've always been that way, or at least in the last 20 years. Believe it or not, I used to have lots of hair. Like,
Yeah, yeah,
I,
yeah.
I promise, there's photos. And I had these long dreadlocks, right? So it was after I had graduated college, and me and my buddies were all hanging out, and I had just gotten my very first job in ministry. So I was a teacher for a while, then I was in ministry, and my buddies were all hanging out. I had this long hair, and they were like, "Oh, I love that," and it was just like, "Hey, you be you," and we're all just trying to be us, and that kind of stuff. We're all like 22, 23, 24. Long story short, I'm pastoring this church full of like old white ladies, right? And it's not their fault that they're old. It's not their fault that they're white. It's just who they are and
Oh,
where they're
it
from.
might be, but anyway.
But I'm not old. I'm not white.
Yeah, yeah.
But I had these long dreadlocks, right? And so I would go to these ladies' houses, and I would try to minister to them in a lot of different ways. And obviously they're entertaining me. And one of the things I found over and over again was that the way I looked really kind of kept them from hearing what I was saying.
Yeah.
Now, okay, like there's a lot there. There's prejudice, there's the bias, there's hey, they should get over it, da 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 da. Da. But then there's also this sense of sacrifice and service. God has put me in this congregation to help these specific people in this specific place in this specific time. And if the thing that is keeping them from hearing the words that I say and that will help their lives become better are these dumb dreadlocks, well, shoot, my identity isn't in the dreadlocks. My identity is in my Father. And so I need to do whatever I can to help this person understand more and more. So I shaved my dreadlocks. And then I went back to my buddies, and they're like, "What are you doing?" Like,
Like you're not becoming one of them.
yeah, exactly. Like, why would you do that? Like, it's you, and let them get over it, and like you be you, and they have to deal with it. And and obviously in our world today, there's a lot of that, and I get that, and I totally get that. But I think when you truly find your identity in Christ, it is not about being a chameleon and fitting in. It's not about trying to be liked and changing everything about yourself in order to. But it's about you genuinely putting your identity in your Father,
Yeah.
and then doing everything you can to serve the people in front of you. And you almost disappear in a way. And obviously you're still who you are, but you do things that are all about serving the person in front of you. And you use the wrong word, just to make sure that the other person feels comfortable, things like that.
I really, really appreciate hearing that. I have rarely heard that understanding through my years, but it's one I have.
Hmm.
Um, you know, uh, to the Jew, I'll be a Jew. To the Greek, I'll be a Greek.
Yeah.
Doesn't really matter. What is the goal?
Hmm.
And so if I've got to shave this, if I got to say it this way versus this way, am I being inauthentic, or am I being caring at a level that allows what God wants to accomplish in this relationship, in
Yeah.
this moment? The woman at the well, you know what I mean? The woman caught in adultery, the Zacchaeus in the tree. I mean, you've got to be there in that moment. And you see, if you don't know who you are, see, you get caught up in this identity thing.
Yes, you do.
And then you have to do it to maintain an identity, which then,
You're trying to prove yourself.
ironically, you're trying to be authentic, but in the moment you're so inauthentic.
You got it.
And that can be a fine line.
You're fighting for you and who you are, and in the process, you're sort of diluting the identity that God has called you to, the mission that He's called you to. Yeah, that's fantastic.
And it creates confusion for those who observe, because they say, well, you said this over here, or you behave that way there. Yeah.
Mm.
But they didn't need to hear that. They needed to hear that.
Right.
So-
Right. And I said it because they needed to hear it the way that I said it. Yeah, that's right.
I'm baffled. We're doing a recording here.
Mm.
There's cameras. And I think of John 13, and when Jesus and disciples went to the upper room, and it was kind of a last minute deal, but they all walked in there, and they had the meal. And then if we had the video, we could watch them coming up, having the meal. And then we see Jesus on the video getting up and washing the feet of the disciples. But what we would not have seen in the video is what John tells us in verses 3 to 5, where he says, Jesus, knowing that he had come from God
Mm. And he's going to God.
and knowing
Mm.
he was returning to God. But see, first of all, it says, Jesus, knowing all authority had been entrusted to him, knowing he had come from God and was returning to God, got up and washed the feet of his disciples.
So good.
Now,
Wow.
that self-understanding is what enabled him to do it, because washing the feet of his disciples did not define him.
Nope.
It expressed who he was. And here's the powerful thing to me, Dan. You and I have been given all authority in heaven and earth, in the power of the Holy Spirit that's in you, it's in me. You and I have been sent by God. God has sent us. We have a purpose. We have a mission. And we know, because of the finished work of Christ on the cross, we're going to spend eternity in heaven.
Right.
So there's nothing I do that affects that. That's fact.
Yeah.
So what I do in the moment, see, now I have the freedom, because what I do doesn't affect my eternity. It simply expresses my mission. And there's great freedom when I can be who I am and know that it isn't affecting these things, because it's done in the finished work of Christ.
It's done. Not to worry about doing it the wrong way. Look, I know where I'm headed, and I know my Father's pleased with me, so I can do the thing that's needed in the
So
moment.
if I got to bite the bullet, shave the dreadlocks, what do I got to do?
What do I got to do?
Doesn't matter.
My identity's not in that.
I was telling you the story earlier about having to bite the bullet and take a loss time after time after time. It's not about me.
Yeah. And you're fine
It's
with
about
that.
the ministry and the mission. And when I look back as to what's happened, how can I not say, yay, God?
So good. So good. Your identity was so deeply ingrained that in that moment, when you had to bite the bullet and take less and less and less, to the story you were talking about, if you would have stood up and said, no, I'm not taking it anymore, give me what I'm due, that would have been out of character.
It would have been out of character for me.
Right.
And it would have stifled what God entrusted to me
100%.
to get out.
Yep.
And it's continuing to get out 40 years later.
You got it. You got it.
And
That's good.
I sit here today in the same lane, because there's still so many that need to understand authentic leadership, how to understand their own ministry, calling, and purpose.
Yeah.
And so I just am excited that I've got to know you, and we've had this time to share those common themes, and I'm excited to follow you as we move forward and hear more about your ministry and branches, and however I can assist you and cheer you on, brother. This is going to be exciting.
This has been a good conversation. I would agree. I mean, the depth of your knowledge, the breadth of your experience, it makes for a really fun conversation. Thanks for having me on.
Well, thank you. God bless you.